People from the city always laugh when I tell them about the rules. They think I'm joking or that I'm just trying to scare them. Maybe I am a little, but mostly I'm trying to keep them alive. In my village, the rainy season isn't just about water. It's about survival. And survival depends on following the rules. I was born in this village, a place so small you could walk from one end to the other in less than half an hour. We're surrounded by thick jungle on 3 sides and a river on the 4th. The air is always heavy, even when it's not raining, and the trees are so dense that sunlight barely touches the ground. When the monsoon comes, the world changes. The river swells, the jungle comes alive, and the rain never seems to stop. That's when the rules matter most. My mother taught me the rules before I could even read. She would sit me down on the old wooden bench outside our house, her voice low and serious, and make me repeat them back to her. 8 rules. 8 lines between life and death. I never questioned them, not really. Not until the night everything changed. The first rule is simple. Never go outside after the first thunderclap. The rain always starts with a single, deep rumble that shakes the ground. That's your warning. Once you hear it, you have to be inside, doors and windows locked, curtains drawn. My mother said the first thunderclap wakes things that should stay sleeping. The second rule, never leave food uncovered. The rain brings out more than just insects. Sometimes, if you leave food out, you'll find muddy footprints on your floor in the morning and the food will be gone. My grandmother used to say the footprints weren't from any animal she knew. The third rule, if you hear someone calling your name from outside, don't answer. Even if it sounds like your mother, your brother, or your best friend. Especially if it sounds like them. The rain carries voices, but not all of them belong to the living. The fourth rule, keep a candle burning in every room. The power always goes out during the storms, and the darkness isn't safe. Shadows move in ways they shouldn't, and sometimes, if you look too long, you'll see eyes staring back at you. The fifth rule, never let the fire in the main hall go out. Every house in the village has a main hall, a place where the family gathers. The fire is more than just warmth. It's protection. My father used to say the fire keeps the old things away. The sixth rule, if you find muddy water inside your house, clean it immediately. Don't ask where it came from. Don't try to follow the trail. Just clean it and sprinkle salt where you found it. Salt keeps the bad things from coming back. The seventh rule, if you see a child outside after dark, don't let them in. No matter how much they cry, no matter how much they beg. The real children are all inside, safe with their families. The ones outside are something else. And the eighth rule, the one my mother always whispered, as if she was afraid the rain itself might hear. Never, ever break a promise during the rainy season. Promises are binding here, more than anywhere else. If you break one, something will come to collect what you owe. I grew up with these rules, repeating them every year as the clouds gathered and the river rose. Most of the time, they felt like superstition, old stories to keep children in line. But every year, someone would forget. Someone would break a rule. And every year, someone would disappear. The rainy season started early the year everything changed. I was 23, home from the city after finishing my studies. My father had passed away the previous winter, and my mother was alone. I came back to help her, to be the dutiful son, though I missed the city's lights and noise. The village felt smaller than ever, the jungle closer, the river louder. The first thunderclap came on a Tuesday evening, just as I was helping my mother bring in the laundry. The sound was so deep it rattled the windows. My mother dropped the basket and grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. Inside. Now, she said, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard. We rushed inside, locking the door behind us. The rain started a few minutes later, heavy and relentless. It drummed on the tin roof, filled the gutters, turned the dirt paths into rivers of mud. I went from room to room, lighting candles, checking the windows, making sure the fire in the main hall was strong. My mother watched me, nodding approval. That night, as the rain hammered the world outside, I sat by the fire and listened to the old stories. My mother told them every year, stories of things that walked in the rain, of voices that called from the darkness, of promises broken and debts collected. I listened, half believing, half dismissing, until I heard my name. It was faint at first, almost lost in the sound of the rain. But then it came again, clearer, closer. I yawned. My heart froze. It was my father's voice, calling from outside. But my father was dead. I looked at my mother. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She shook her head, silently mouthing the words, "Don't answer." The voice called again, softer this time, almost pleading. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands over my ears, trying to block it out. The fire crackled, the candles flickered, and the rain kept falling. That was the first night, the first test. I followed the rules, and the voice eventually faded, swallowed by the storm. But not everyone in the village was so careful. The next morning, the rain was still falling, but softer, a steady curtain that blurred the world outside our windows. I barely slept, haunted by the sound of my father's voice echoing in the storm. My mother moved quietly through the house, checking the candles, feeding the fire, muttering prayers under her breath. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just a dream, a trick of memory and grief. But when I stepped outside to fetch water from the well, I saw muddy footprints on our doorstep. They were too small to be mine, too wide to be my mother's. I stared at them, heart pounding, until my mother came up behind me. "Don't touch them," she said, her voice low. "Go inside. I'll take care of it." She sprinkled salt over the footprints, then swept them away with a bundle of neem branches. I watched from the window, feeling like a child again, powerless and afraid. The rules weren't just stories. They were warnings. By midday, the village was buzzing with rumors. Someone had heard voices in the night. Someone else had found muddy water in their kitchen. An old woman claimed she saw a child standing in the rain, staring at her window, unmoving for hours. No one admitted to breaking the rules, but everyone looked tired, anxious, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting something to appear. I spent the afternoon helping my mother patch leaks in the roof and reinforce the doors. The rain was supposed to last for weeks, maybe longer. The river was already rising, creeping closer to the edge of the village. Every year, the water took a little more land, a few more trees. Every year, the jungle seemed to press in, as if trying to reclaim what we had stolen. That evening, as the sky darkened and the rain grew heavier, I went to visit my childhood friend, Imran. His house was at the far end of the village, near the old banyan tree. We hadn't seen much of each other since I returned from the city, but I needed to talk to someone who understood, someone who remembered the rules. Imran greeted me at the door, his face drawn and pale. He let me in quickly, locking the door behind us. "You heard it too, didn't you?" he asked, not bothering with small talk. I nodded. My father's voice. Last night. He shivered, glancing at the window. Mine was my sister. She's in Karachi, but I heard her calling me, asking for help. I almost answered. We sat by his fire, sharing stories, trying to make sense of what was happening. Imran's grandmother, Amma, sat in the corner, her eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. She was the oldest person in the village, the keeper of the old stories. When she spoke, everyone listened. As the night deepened, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. The fire flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Amma opened her eyes and looked at us. "The rain is different this year," she said, her voice thin but steady. "The old things are restless. The rules are being tested." Imran and I exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know, but I feel it. The jungle is hungry. The river is angry. We must be careful." We sat in silence, listening to the storm. I thought about the rules, about the footprints on my doorstep, about the voice that sounded like my father. I wondered what would happen if someone broke a rule. I wondered if anyone already had. When I returned home, my mother was waiting for me, worry etched on her face. She scolded me for staying out so late, for risking the rain. I apologized, promising to be more careful. She made me repeat the rules again, her voice trembling. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain. I thought about the city, about the life I'd left behind. I wondered if the rules would make sense to anyone outside this village, if they would believe the stories, or just laugh them off like I once did. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, squelching in the mud. I held my breath, counting the seconds between each step. The footsteps stopped at our door. I heard a soft, wet thud, then silence. I wanted to look, to peek through the curtains, but I remembered the rules. I stayed in bed, eyes squeezed shut, listening to my own heartbeat. In the morning, I found a small puddle of muddy water just inside the door. My mother saw it too, her face going pale. "Don't touch it," she whispered. She fetched the salt and sprinkled it over the puddle, then wiped it away with a rag. She burned the rag in the fire, muttering prayers the whole time. The rain didn't let up. The days blurred together, a constant cycle of darkness, dampness, and fear. The village grew quieter, people staying indoors, windows shuttered, fires burning day and night. The rules became our lifeline, the only thing standing between us and whatever waited in the rain. But rules are only as strong as the people who follow them. On the fifth night, everything changed. It started with a scream. I was sitting by the fire, reading an old book by candlelight, when I heard it. A high, desperate wail, cutting through the sound of the rain. It came from the center of the village, near the well. My mother looked at me, fear in her eyes. "Don't go," she said, grabbing my arm. But the scream came again, louder, closer. I recognized the voice. It was Imran. I stood up, heart pounding. "I have to help him." My mother shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No," I yawned. "Remember the rules. If you hear someone calling for help in the rain, you must not go. It's not safe." But it was Imran, my best friend. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. The scream came again, raw and terrified. I yawned. "Please, help me." I hesitated, torn between the rules and my loyalty. My mother's grip tightened, but I pulled free. "I'm sorry," I whispered and ran out into the storm. The rain hit me like a wall, cold and relentless, soaking me to the bone within seconds. The world outside was unrecognizable, shadows twisted by the flickering light of distant fires, the ground a river of mud. I stumbled toward the center of the village, my heart hammering, Imran's screams echoing in my ears. As I neared the well, I saw a small crowd gathered, their faces pale and frightened, huddled beneath umbrellas and shawls. Some clutched lanterns, their trembling hands casting wild shadows on the ground. In the center of the circle, Imran was on his knees, clutching his head, sobbing uncontrollably. His mother knelt beside him, trying to pull him to his feet. Imran, Beta, what happened? What did you see? He shook his head, eyes wide with terror. It was her. She was outside my window. She kept calling my name. I thought it was my sister, but he broke off, shuddering. The elders pushed through the crowd, their faces grim. Alma was there, wrapped in her old shawl, her eyes sharper than I'd ever seen. She knelt beside Imran, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tell us what happened," she said softly. Imran's voice shook. I heard her calling me. My sister. She sounded so scared. I opened the window. Just a little. I wanted to see if she was really there. I saw her face, but it wasn't right. Her eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too deep. She smiled at me, and her teeth. He gagged, unable to finish. A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone knew the rules. Everyone knew what it meant to break them. Alma stood, her face grave. We must bring him inside. The rain is not safe tonight. The villagers helped Imran to his feet, guiding him toward his house. I followed, guilt gnawing at me. I'd almost broken the same rule. If my mother hadn't stopped me, I might have opened the door, answered the voice. I might have ended up like Imran. Inside his house, the elders gathered around the fire, whispering urgently. Imran sat by the flames, wrapped in blankets, his eyes unfocused. His mother wept quietly, holding his hand. Alma turned to me. "You must go home, Ayan. Stay with your mother. Tonight is dangerous. The rules are more important than ever." I nodded, but as I stepped outside, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. The village felt different, heavier, as if the air itself was watching. I hurried home, locking the door behind me, lighting every candle I could find. My mother was waiting, her face drawn with worry. She didn't scold me. She just hugged me tightly, whispering prayers into my hair. That night, the rain grew even stronger. The wind howled, rattling the windows, and the river roared in the distance. I sat by the fire, staring into the flames, trying to forget Imran's terrified face. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadows moving in the corners of the room and heard voices whispering my name. I checked the doors and windows again and again, making sure they were locked, the curtains drawn tight. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside. Slow, dragging, circling the house. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped at the door. A soft knock, barely audible over the rain. "Ayan," a voice called. It was Imran. I froze. I'd just seen him, safe inside his house. But the voice was perfect, his tone, his accent, even the way he said my name. "Ayan, please. Let me in. I'm cold. I'm scared." I backed away from the door, heart pounding. My mother appeared beside me, her face pale. "Don't answer," she whispered. "Don't even look." The voice grew more desperate. "Ayan, please. Something's out here. It's coming for me. Please, open the door." I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out. The fire flickered, the candles guttered. Shadows danced on the walls, growing longer, darker. Then, suddenly, the voice changed. It grew deeper, colder, and inhuman. "You broke the rules, Ayan. You left the house. You ran into the rain. You owe us." The temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath, feel the chills sinking into my bones. My mother grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. "We have to keep the fire burning," she said, her voice shaking. "Don't let it go out." We piled more wood onto the flames, watching as the fire struggled against the cold. The shadows pressed closer, swirling around the edges of the room. I could hear voices whispering, chanting, promising things I didn't want to understand. For hours, we sat by the fire, fighting to stay awake, fighting to stay warm. The rain never stopped. The wind never died. And outside, something waited. When dawn finally came, the storm eased, the wind softened, and the voices faded. I stumbled to the window, peeking through the curtains. The village was quiet, eerily so. No one moved in the streets. No one called out greetings. It was as if the world was holding its breath. I stepped outside, blinking in the pale morning light. The ground was covered in mud, the river swollen and angry. I made my way to Imran's house, dread coiling in my stomach. Inside, I found his mother sitting by the cold ashes of the fire, her face streaked with tears. Imran was gone. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard him go. It was as if he had vanished into the rain. The elders gathered in the main hall, their faces grim. Amma spoke, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The rules are changing," she said. "The old protections are failing. We must be more careful than ever." I listened, fear gnawing at me. If the rules could change, what hope did we have? What would keep us safe? That night, as the rain began again, I sat by the fire, repeating the rules to myself, over and over, hoping they would be enough. The days that followed felt like a waking nightmare. The rain never stopped, not even for an hour. The river crept higher, swallowing the lower fields, and the jungle pressed closer, its shadows growing longer and darker. The village moved in slow motion, everyone speaking in hushed voices, eyes darting to the windows at every sound. Imran's disappearance hung over us like a curse. His mother wandered the village, calling his name, her voice hoarse and broken. The elders tried to comfort her, but their words rang hollow. Everyone knew what had happened, even if no one dared to say it aloud. Imran had broken the rules, and the rain had taken him. I tried to help where I could, fetching water, delivering food to the elderly, patching leaks in the roofs. But everywhere I went, I saw signs that the rules were slipping. Muddy footprints appeared in places they shouldn't. Candles flickered and died for no reason. Once, I found a trail of muddy water leading from the back door of the schoolhouse to the old banyan tree, where it simply vanished. The village children grew restless, trapped indoors for days on end. Their parents kept them close, warning them not to answer if anyone called from outside, not to look out the windows after dark. But children are curious, and fear only goes so far. One afternoon, as I was returning from the well, I saw a small figure standing in the rain near the edge of the jungle. At first, I thought it was one of the village children, lost or playing a game. But as I drew closer, I realized something was wrong. The figure didn't move, didn't shiver, didn't even seem to breathe. Its clothes were soaked, clinging to its thin frame, and its hair hung in wet, tangled strands over its face. I stopped, heart pounding. The seventh rule echoed in my mind. If you see a child outside after dark, don't let them in. But it was still daylight, wasn't it? The sky was so dark with clouds that it was hard to tell. The figure slowly raised its head, and I saw its eyes, black, empty, endless. It smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that stretched too far. My legs locked in place, fear rooting me to the spot. I yawned. It whispered, its voice echoing with a dozen others. "Come play with us." I stumbled backward, nearly falling in the mud. The figure didn't follow. It just stood there, watching, its smile never fading. I turned and ran, not stopping until I reached my house, slamming the door behind me. My mother found me shaking by the fire, my clothes dripping, my face pale. "What happened?" she asked, worry etched in every line of her face. I tried to explain, but the words stuck in my throat. All I could do was repeat the rules, over and over, like a prayer. That night, the rain grew even heavier, if such a thing was possible. The wind screamed through the trees, and the river roared like a living thing. The fire in our main hall burned low, the wood damp and reluctant to catch. My mother and I huddled close, feeding the flames, watching the shadows dance on the walls. Sometime after midnight, there was a knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate raps. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Ayan," a voice called. It was Imran again, or something that wore his voice. "Let me in. I'm cold. I'm hungry." My mother shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't answer. Don't move." The voice grew more insistent, more desperate. "Please, Ayan. I'm scared. I don't want to be alone." I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out. The fire flickered, the candles guttered. Shadows pressed closer, swirling around the edges of the room. Then, suddenly, the voice changed. It grew deeper, colder, and inhuman. "You broke the rules, Ayan. You left the house. You ran into the rain. You owe us." The temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath, feel the chills sinking into my bones. My mother grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. "We have to keep the fire burning," she said, her voice shaking. "Don't let it go out." We piled more wood onto the flames, watching as the fire struggled against the cold. The shadows pressed closer, swirling around the edges of the room. I could hear voices whispering, chanting, promising things I didn't want to understand. For hours, we sat by the fire, fighting to stay awake, fighting to stay warm. The rain never stopped. The wind never died. And outside, something waited. When dawn finally came, the storm eased, the wind softened, and the voices faded. I stumbled to the window, peeking through the curtains. The village was quiet, eerily so. No one moved in the streets. No one called out greetings. It was as if the world was holding its breath. I stepped outside, blinking in the pale morning light. The ground was covered in mud, the river swollen and angry. I made my way to Imran's house, dread coiling in my stomach. Inside, I found his mother sitting by the cold ashes of the fire, her face streaked with tears. Imran was gone. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard him go. It was as if he had vanished into the rain. The elders gathered in the main hall, their faces grim. Amma spoke, her voice heavy with sorrow. "The rules are changing," she said. "The old protections are failing. We must be more careful than ever." I listened, fear gnawing at me. If the rules could change, what hope did we have? What would keep us safe? That night, as the rain began again, I sat by the fire, repeating the rules to myself, over and over, hoping they would be enough. The next few days blurred together, each one darker and wetter than the last. The rain was relentless, pounding the rooftops, turning the paths to rivers of mud. The river's edge crept closer, swallowing the old footbridge and threatening the lower houses. The jungle, too, seemed to press in, the trees bending under the weight of the storm, their branches scraping at windows like desperate fingers. Inside our home, my mother and I clung to the rituals that had always kept us safe. We checked the doors and windows every hour, relit candles that gutted out, and fed the fire with every scrap of dry wood we could find. But the sense of safety was slipping away, replaced by a constant, gnawing fear. The village was changing. People whispered of strange sights in the rain, shapes moving between the trees, faces at the windows, voices that sounded almost familiar. Some claimed to have seen Imran, or children who had vanished years ago, standing in the downpour, staring at their old homes with empty eyes. No one dared to let them in. One evening, As I was returning from delivering food to old Amma, I saw a group of villagers gathered at the edge of the river. They stood in a tight circle, their faces pale and drawn, speaking in urgent whispers. I pushed my way through the crowd and saw what had drawn them: a line of muddy footprints, leading from the water's edge straight to the door of the schoolhouse. The footprints were too large for a child, but too small for any of the men. They were spaced oddly, as if whoever made them had walked with a limp or with legs that bent the wrong way. The elders argued about what to do, but Amma silenced them with a single word. "Salt," she said. We scattered salt over the footprints, watching as the rain washed it into the mud. The villagers crossed themselves, muttering prayers, and hurried back to their homes before darkness fell. That night, the rain was so heavy it drowned out every other sound. I sat by the fire, staring into the flames, trying to ignore the shadows that danced on the walls. My mother dozed in her chair, her face lined with exhaustion. Suddenly, the candles in the far room flickered and went out. The fire sputtered, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. I jumped to my feet, heart racing. "Stay here," I told my mother, grabbing a fresh candle and a box of matches. The hallway was cold and dark, the air thick with the smell of wet earth. I lit the candle, its small flame barely pushing back the gloom. As I reached the end of the hall, I saw a puddle of muddy water spreading across the floor, seeping from beneath the back door. I knelt, hands shaking, and sprinkled salt around the puddle, just as my mother had taught me. The water hissed, as if something alive recoiled from the touch. I wiped it up with an old rag, then burned the rag in the fire, watching the smoke curl up into the darkness. When I returned to the main hall, my mother was awake, her eyes wide with fear. "What happened?" she asked. "Just water," I lied, not wanting to worry her more. She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe me. The next morning, the village woke to find the river had risen again, swallowing the last of the lower fields. The elders called a meeting in the main hall, their faces grim. Amma stood at the front, her shawl pulled tight around her thin shoulders. "The rules are failing," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The old protections are not enough. We must find a new way." The villagers murmured, fear and doubt in every voice. Some wanted to leave, to flee to the city until the rains ended. Others argued that leaving would only anger the things in the rain, that the jungle would not let them go so easily. Amma raised her hand in silence. "We will stay. We will watch. We will learn. But above all, we must not break the rules. Not now. Not when the night is so close." That night, I sat by the fire, listening to the rain. My mother slept fitfully, waking every hour to check the doors and windows. I tried to read, but the words blurred on the page, my mind drifting to Imran, to the child in the rain, to the footprints by the river. Sometime after midnight, I heard a soft tapping at the window. I froze, every muscle tensed. The tapping came again, slow and deliberate. I crept to the window, careful not to disturb my mother. I peeked through the curtain, heart pounding. A face stared back at me, pale, wet, with eyes as black as the river at midnight. It smiled, showing too many teeth. I yawned. It whispered, its voice a chorus of echoes. "Let me in." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a chair. The fire flickered, the shadows pressed closer. The voice came again, softer, more insistent. "Ayan, you promised. You said you'd never leave me behind." I remembered the 8th rule. Never, ever break a promise during the rainy season. My mind raced, trying to remember, had I made a promise? To Imran? To anyone? The face at the window pressed closer, its features shifting, becoming less human with every second. "You promised," it hissed. I ran to the fire, grabbing the poker, stirring the flames until they roared back to life. The face vanished, swallowed by the darkness. I sat by the fire until dawn, afraid to sleep, afraid to dream. The next day, the rain finally eased for a few hours, leaving the village in a heavy, humid silence. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. People emerged from their homes, blinking in the gray light, moving quietly as if afraid to disturb whatever still lingered in the shadows. I wandered the village, checking on neighbors, helping Amma carry water from the well. Everywhere I went, I saw the same haunted look in people's eyes. No one spoke of the faces at the windows, the voices in the night, but everyone knew. The rules were all that stood between us and the things that waited in the rain. That afternoon, the elders gathered in the main hall. The fire burned low, casting long shadows on the walls. Amma sat at the head of the circle, her hands folded in her lap. "We must talk about the promises," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The villagers shifted uneasily. Promises were sacred in our village, especially during the rainy season. To break one was to invite disaster. Amma looked at me, her eyes sharp. "Ayan, did you make a promise to anyone before the rains began?" I thought hard, searching my memory. I promised Imran I'd help him fix his roof. But I never did. The rain started early, and I was busy with my mother. A murmur ran through the room. Amma nodded, her face grave. "A broken promise is a door left open. The things in the rain remember. They use our words against us." I felt a cold weight settle on my chest. Was that why Imran's face had come to my window? Was that why the voices whispered my name? "We must make amends," Amma said. "If you have broken a promise, you must find a way to set it right, even if the person is gone." The villagers nodded, some weeping quietly. I left the hall, my mind racing. How could I keep a promise to someone who had vanished into the rain? That evening, I gathered what I needed: tools, nails, and a bundle of dry thatch. I made my way to Imran's house, the sky already darkening with the threat of more rain. His mother watched from the doorway, her eyes red from crying. "I'm here to fix the roof," I said softly. She nodded, stepping aside. I climbed onto the roof, patching the holes, replacing the broken tiles, working by the light of a single lantern. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something older, something hungry. As I worked, I whispered an apology to Imran, to the things in the rain, to anyone who might be listening. When I finished, I climbed down, my hands raw and bleeding. Imran's mother pressed a warm roti into my hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Maybe now he can rest." I walked home in the darkness, the first drops of rain beginning to fall. The village was silent, every window shuttered, every door locked. I hurried inside, lighting the candles, feeding the fire, repeating the rules to myself. That night, the rain returned with a vengeance. The wind howled, shaking the walls, and the river roared like a beast. I sat by the fire, my mother dozing beside me, the rules running through my mind like a mantra. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, circling the house. I held my breath, listening. A soft knock at the door. Then another. Then another. "Ayan," a voice called. It was Imran again, but softer this time, less desperate. "Thank you." The footsteps faded, swallowed by the storm. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through me. Maybe Amma was right. Maybe keeping my promise had closed a door, sealed a crack in the defenses. But the night was not over. A sudden gust of wind blew out the candles in the far room. The fire sputtered, struggling against the cold. I rushed to relight the candles, but the matches wouldn't catch. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. From the corner of the room, a shadow moved. It slid along the wall, growing taller, darker, more solid with every second. I backed away, heart pounding. The shadow stopped in front of me, its shape shifting, becoming almost human. It had no face, no eyes, just a mouth that stretched from ear to ear. "You kept your promise," it whispered, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "But others have not." The shadow reached out, its hand cold as ice, brushing my cheek. "The rules are changing," I yawned. "The old ways are not enough. The rain is hungry. The jungle is awake. The river remembers." I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. "What do you want?" I managed to whisper. The shadow smiled, a terrible, endless grin. "Survive," it said. "If you can." The shadow melted into the darkness, leaving me alone in the cold, silent room. I relit the candles, fed the fire, and sat by the flames until dawn, the words echoing in my mind. The rules are changing. The next morning, the village felt different. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of wet earth and something metallic, like old blood. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the sky was still dark, the sun a pale ghost behind the clouds. People moved quietly, eyes downcast, as if afraid to meet each other's gaze. I walked to the main hall, my mind still reeling from the shadow's warning. Alma was already there, sitting by the fire, her face drawn and tired. The elders gathered around her, their voices low and urgent. "We must add to the rules," Alma said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "The old ways are not enough. The things in the rain are changing, adapting. We must do the same." The villagers listened, fear and hope mingling in their eyes. For generations, the 8 rules had kept us safe. Now, for the first time, we were being asked to change them. Alma looked at me. "Ayan, you have seen more than most. What do you think?" I hesitated, the memory of the shadow's touch still cold on my skin. "The rules work, but only if we keep them. And if we break them, we must make amends. Maybe we need a new rule. If you break a rule, you must confess before dawn. You must ask for forgiveness from the village and from the rain." A murmur ran through the hall. Some nodded, others looked uncertain. Alma nodded slowly. "Yes, confession and atonement. The rain is listening. The jungle is watching. We must show we are willing to change." The elders debated for hours, arguing over the wording, the meaning, the consequences. In the end, they agreed. A 9th rule would be added, a rule of confession and forgiveness. 9th rule: if you break any rule during the rainy season, you must confess before dawn and seek forgiveness from the village and the spirits of the rain. That night, the new rule was announced to the village. People gathered in the main hall, candles flickering, faces pale and anxious. Alma spoke the words, her voice strong despite her age. "These are the rules that keep us safe. 8 from the old times and 1 new. Remember them. Follow them. And if you falter, confess before dawn. The rain is hungry, but it respects honesty." After the meeting, I walked home with my mother. She was quiet, lost in thought. "Do you think it will work?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it's better than doing nothing." That night, the rain returned, heavier than ever. The wind howled, shaking the house, and the river roared in the darkness. I sat by the fire, repeating the rules to myself, the new one last of all. Sometime after midnight, I heard footsteps outside. Slow, dragging, circling the house. I held my breath, listening. A soft knock at the door. Then another. Then another. I yawned. A voice called. It was Imran again, but softer this time, less desperate. Thank you. The footsteps faded, swallowed by the storm. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through me. Maybe Alma was right. Maybe keeping my promise had closed a door, sealed a crack in the defenses. But the night was not over. A sudden gust of wind blew out the candles in the far room. The fire sputtered, struggling against the cold. I rushed to relight the candles, but the matches wouldn't catch. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. From the corner of the room, a shadow moved. It slid along the wall, growing taller, darker, more solid with every second. I backed away, heart pounding. The shadow stopped in front of me, its shape shifting, becoming almost human. It had no face, no eyes, just a mouth that stretched from ear to ear. You kept your promise, it whispered, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. But others have not. The shadow reached out, its hand cold as ice, brushing my cheek. The rules are changing, I yawned. The old ways are not enough. The rain is hungry. The jungle is awake. The river remembers. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. What do you want? I managed to whisper. The shadow smiled, a terrible, endless grin. Survive, it said, if you can. The shadow melted into the darkness, leaving me alone in the cold, silent room. I relit the candles, fed the fire, and sat by the flames until dawn, the words echoing in my mind. The rules are changing. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. The rain was unending, a constant drumbeat on the rooftops, a reminder that the world outside was no longer ours. The river had swallowed the last of the fields, and the jungle pressed so close that the village felt like an island, cut off from everything but the storm. But something had shifted. The new rule, confession and forgiveness, spread through the village like a fragile hope. Each morning, after a night of fear and whispers, people gathered in the main hall. Some came forward, voices trembling, to admit their mistakes. A forgotten candle, a door left unlocked, a promise broken in haste. The elders listened, Alma's eyes kind but sharp, and the village forgave. Salt was sprinkled, prayers were said, and the fire was fed anew. It wasn't perfect. The fear was still there, but it was shared now, not hidden. The things in the rain seemed to sense the change. The voices at the windows grew less frequent. The muddy footprints faded faster, and the shadows retreated a little from the candlelight. One night, as the rain hammered the roof and the wind howled through the trees, I sat by the fire with my mother. She was sewing, her hands steady despite the storm. I watched her, thinking of all the years she had kept me safe, all the time she had whispered the rules in my ear. "Do you remember when you were little?" she said suddenly. "And you asked me why we had so many rules." I smiled, the memory clear. "I thought you were just being strict." She laughed softly, the sound warm and real. "I was afraid. I still am. But I think we're stronger now. Not because the rules are perfect, but because we faced the fear together." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The village was still in danger, the rain still hungry, but we were not alone. That night, I dreamed of Imran. He stood at the edge of the jungle, his face calm, his eyes clear. He smiled at me, not the twisted grin of the thing in the rain, but the real, gentle smile I remembered. "Thank you," he said, "for keeping your promise, for remembering me." I woke with tears on my cheeks, the sound of the rain softer than before. The next morning, the sky was lighter, the clouds thinner. The rain had not stopped, but it had gentled, a steady patter instead of a roar. People emerged from their homes, blinking in the pale light, hope flickering in their eyes. Amma called a meeting in the main hall. The fire burned bright, the air warm and dry for the first time in weeks. "The worst has passed," she said, her voice strong. "But the rules remain. The rain will come again, and the things in the jungle will wait. But we have learned, we have changed, and we will survive." The villagers nodded, relief and pride mingling on their faces. The rules had changed, but so had we. As the days passed, the rain finally began to fade. The river receded, the jungle pulled back, and the sun broke through the clouds in golden shafts. The village came alive again, children playing in the mud, women hanging laundry in the breeze, men repairing the damage left by the storm. But the rules were never forgotten. Every year, as the clouds gathered and the first thunderclap rolled across the sky, we repeated them together, old and new. Never go outside after the first thunderclap. Never leave food uncovered. If you hear someone calling your name from outside, don't answer. Keep a candle burning in every room. Never let the fire in the main hall go out. If you find muddy water inside your house, clean it immediately. If you see a child outside after dark, don't let them in. Never, ever break a promise during the rainy season. And if you break a rule, confess before dawn and seek forgiveness. The jungle still waits, the river still remembers, and the rain will always return. But now, when the storm comes, we face it together, our voices strong, our hearts steady. And I know, deep down, that as long as we remember the rules and each other, we will survive. The years have passed since that season when the rules changed. I am older now, and the world outside our village has changed in ways I could never have imagined as a child. But every monsoon, when the sky turns black and the river begins to rise, I find myself repeating the rules under my breath, just as my mother once did. Sometimes, I walk through the village at dusk, watching as families light their candles and gather around their fires. I see children peeking out from behind curtains, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. I hear the elders reciting the rules, their voices steady, their words carrying the weight of generations. There are still nights when the rain falls so hard it drowns out every other sound, when the wind rattles the windows and the jungle seems to press in from all sides. On those nights, I remember Imran and Amma and all the others who kept the rules before me. I remember the faces at the window, the voices in the darkness, the promises made and broken. I have learned that survival is not just about following rules, but about understanding why they exist. It is about community, about forgiveness, about facing fear together. The rules are not chains, but lifelines, reminders that we are never truly alone, even when the storm is at its worst. Last year, a new family moved to the village. Their little boy, Arif, was curious and bold, always asking questions, always testing boundaries. When the first thunderclap came, I found him outside, staring up at the sky, unafraid. I knelt beside him and told him the rules, one by one, just as my mother had told me. He listened, his eyes wide, and when I finished, he nodded solemnly. "Will the rain come for me if I forget?" he asked. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "The rain comes for everyone, Arif. But if you remember the rules, and if you remember to ask for help when you need it, you'll be safe." We all will. That night, as the rain began to fall, I heard Arif's voice joining the others in the main hall, reciting the rules with the rest of the village. His voice was small, but it was strong, and it carried through the darkness like a promise. The storm will always return. The jungle will always wait. The river will always be remembered. But so will we. And as long as we do, as long as we hold to the rules and to each other, there is nothing in the rain that we cannot face.